When you sent in your request to explore the Assyrian tribes of Hakkari, I gotta say, my curiosity, it was immediately piqued. The Tyari and Tkhuma, just those names, they just have this weight to them, don't they?
Yeah, it's almost like they echo with the resilience of the mountains themselves.
Right.
And you're right to want to delve deeper than just the names, because their story, set against that backdrop of 17th and 18th century Hakkari, is truly something else.
That's exactly what I was hoping we could unpack together today.
Yeah.
You mentioned wanting to understand not just who these tribes were, but how they thrived for centuries in such a challenging environment.
And that's where we need to start, with Hakkari itself.
Okay.
Picture this, a region so mountainous, so isolated, it's almost like time stood still there. Towering peaks, deep valleys, very few ways in or out. It was a double-edged sword for the Assyrians who found refuge there.
Okay, so Hakkari's geography, it becomes a key character in this story, right? It provides protection, but also presents some serious obstacles.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Those steep valleys and limited access routes were a nightmare for any would-be invader. It's no wonder they developed a reputation for being so formidable. But that same isolation also meant limited resources. They couldn't exactly pop down to the local market for supplies.
That's where that incredible resourcefulness you read about comes in, right? Like, did you know they actually figured out how to source gunpowder from lead mines in Dura? Talk about making do.
That's just one example. Their ability to adapt is a constant theme. Herding livestock provided sustenance, strategic trade with neighboring regions brought in essential goods, and they even formed alliances, sometimes uneasy ones, with other groups in the area.
Oh.
All of this points to a deep understanding of their environment and a knack for not just surviving, but thriving against the odds.
It's like the land itself shaped them, wouldn't you say? Forged them into something unique.
Absolutely. And that brings us to those names that fascinated you, the Tyari and the Tkhuma. These weren't just tribes, they were forces to be reckoned with, each with their own distinct character.
Let's talk about the Tiari first. I have to say, the more I read about their warrior culture, the more impressed I am. These weren't just fighters, they lived and breathed combat.
The sources paint a vivid picture. The Tiaris were renowned for their distinctive clothing, which, if you imagine it, served almost like a warrior's uniform, marking them out, instilling a sense of pride and unity. But more than that, it was their unwavering loyalty and that deep-rooted martial culture that really set them apart.
They were so dedicated to defense that even their children trained for combat. Can you imagine?
It's remarkable, isn't it?
It's wild.
Try to picture a young Tyari child, barely old enough to hold a bow steady, already being taught the ways of warfare. It speaks volumes about their way of life. Every member of the tribe, from a young age, understood that defense was paramount. And it wasn't just the men who answered the call to arms.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, right? The role of women in Tiari society was different from what many might expect, especially for that time period.
What's fascinating is that Dr. Asahel Grant, an American missionary and physician who actually traveled through Hakkari in the 1830s, observed this firsthand. His writings are a valuable resource for understanding the region, and he explicitly noted the elevated status of women among the Tiari.
Which challenges our assumptions about gender roles back then, to say the least. It's clear that women were active participants in tribal life, in decision-making, and even in defending their communities.
Precisely. And this wasn't unique to the Tyari. The neighboring Tkhuma tribe had similar societal structures where women were respected and held positions of influence. This shared responsibility, this deep sense of community, was a key aspect of their strength. But the Tkhuma also understood the importance of looking outward.
They were known for their strategic alliances. And I have to ask, is it true about that saying, the one that claims one Tkhuma warrior was equal to 5 of their enemies? It's practically legendary.
Well, it certainly speaks to their reputation. They were famous, or infamous, depending on who you ask, for their skill in hand-to-hand combat. The mountains, you see, often forced them to engage in close-quarter fighting, which shaped their tactics and fostered a particular kind of ferocious bravery. But they were also pragmatic. The Tkhuma knew that to survive in such a volatile region, they couldn't rely on strength alone.
So they forged these fascinating alliances, not just within their own tribe, but with other Assyrian groups like the Jalu and the Baz. It's a really interesting mix of individual strength and collective strategy. They were fierce warriors, no doubt, but also shrewd diplomats.
They had to be. Survival in that environment required a deep understanding of the political landscape, the ability to negotiate and form alliances, and the unwavering will to defend what was theirs. And that's where, unfortunately, our story takes a bit of a turn.
Because we can't talk about the Tyari and Tkhuma without talking about the threats they faced. And it's important for us to really grasp the level of danger these tribes were constantly navigating. It wasn't just about skirmishes or border disputes.
No, you're absolutely right. The Assyrians of Hakkari, especially the Tyari and Tkhuma, were caught in a web of complex power struggles. To truly appreciate their resilience, we have to understand the pressures they faced.
And there's one name that looms large in this story, Bedr Khan.
Ah, Bedr Khan.
Yeah.
His name sends chills down the spine of Assyrian history, and for good reason. He was a powerful Kurdish chieftain with a ruthless ambition and a singular goal: to eliminate the Assyrian presence in the region.
This wasn't just about military conquest, though, was it? It was about erasing them, wasn't it?
Precisely. Bedr Khan posed an existential threat to the Assyrians of Hakkari. His campaigns weren't simply about defeating them on the battlefield. He aimed to dismantle their culture, their faith, their entire way of life. We're talking forced conversions, horrific brutality, all designed to crush their spirit.
You know, when I was reading through the materials you provided, there's this one account from Austen Henry Layard, the British archaeologist, that really stuck with me. Layard, writing about his travels through the region, recounts being told that even Bedr Khan's own guards were terrified to set foot in Tyari territory.
It gives you a sense of the reputation that Tyari had cultivated, doesn't it? They were legendary for their fierce defense of their homeland and their mastery of guerrilla tactics in those unforgiving mountains. Bedr Khan's forces might have outnumbered them, but they couldn't match the Tyari's knowledge of that terrain. Every hidden path, every potential ambush point, it was second nature to them.
So it became this almost cat-and-mouse game, with the Tyari using their knowledge of the mountains to their advantage.
Exactly. Imagine Bedr Khan's forces, heavily armed and numerous, trying to navigate those treacherous mountain passes, always looking over their shoulders. Meanwhile, the Tyari, knowing every inch of their homeland, would launch these surprise attacks, inflicting heavy losses and then melting back into the landscape.
It's almost like a David and Goliath story, except in this case, David knows the terrain like the back of his hand and uses it strategically.
Exactly, and it wasn't just their military prowess. What constantly amazes me is their unyielding dedication to their cultural identity. Think about it. They faced the very real threat of being wiped out, yet they clung to their traditions, language, and faith.
It makes you wonder, what were those pillars of identity that proved so unbreakable for the Tyari and Tkhuma? How did they manage to keep their culture alive in the face of such adversity?
It's a multifaceted answer, really. Their language, Aramaic, served as this unbroken thread connecting them to their ancestors, to their history. Even when under pressure to adopt the languages of their oppressors, they held on to Aramaic. Using it in their homes, in their rituals, it became a symbol of defiance and a source of unity.
It's like a secret code, a way to preserve their heritage right under the noses of those who sought to erase it.
Precisely. And then there's the matter of their faith. Despite repeated attempts to suppress it, their religious practices continued, often in secret. Imagine, if you will, those hidden gatherings, the whispered prayers, the clandestine maintenance of their ancient rituals. It speaks volumes about their dedication to preserving their spiritual heritage.
It's like keeping a candle lit in the storm, that unwavering belief.
Yes, and we can't forget the power of storytelling. The songs, the poems, the tales of their ancestors, these weren't just entertainment. They were history lessons, moral compasses, and above all, testaments to their enduring identity. Passed down through generations, these stories kept their heritage alive in the hearts and minds of the Tyari and Tkhuma.
It's almost like their culture itself became a form of resistance.
And it went beyond the abstract. Let's take, for example, their celebrations and festivals. Think about it. Here they were, surrounded by enemies, living with the constant threat of attack. Yet they still found ways to hold on to those joyous expressions of their culture, their festivals. It's a testament to the human spirit's need to find light, even in the darkest of times, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like celebrating their identity wasn't just important, it was practically an act of defiance.
Mm.
It makes you realize that their story isn't just confined to the past, does it?
Not at all. The legacy of the Tyari and Tkhuma is very much alive today. Think about this. A significant portion of today's Assyrian population, those scattered across the globe, can trace their ancestry back to that region, to those very tribes.
So we're talking about a living, breathing connection to those fierce warriors and resilient communities we've been discussing.
Exactly. The echoes of Hakkari resonate through generations, and that's something we need to keep in mind as we explore this history. It's not just a collection of names and dates, it's a testament to the enduring power of culture, of shared heritage that continues to shape the lives of people today.
It really makes you appreciate the strength and resilience of the human spirit, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The Tyari and Tkhuma, they teach us that even when faced with unimaginable hardship, even when it seems like everything is stacked against you, culture can endure. It's a powerful reminder, especially for those who descend from those tribes, that their ancestors overcame challenges that seem insurmountable. It's a powerful legacy.
It makes you think about the true meaning of resilience, doesn't it? It's not just about weathering the storm, it's about coming out on the other side, maybe a little battered, but with your identity intact.
And for many descendants of the Tyari and Tkhuma, that connection to their past, to those stories of resilience, is a source of immense pride.
So as we approach the end of our deep dive here, I'm left with this sense of awe at the tenacity of the human spirit. What would you say is the most important thing for our listener to take away from the story of the Tyari and Tkhuma?
That even in the face of overwhelming odds, hope, courage, and an unwavering belief in who you are can be the most potent weapons. Their story is a testament to that.
Beautifully said. You know, it's impossible to talk about the Tyari and Tkhuma without acknowledging the shadow of later events, especially for our listener who is aware of the Assyrian genocide.
Absolutely. The forced migrations, the massacres, these events left an indelible mark on the Assyrian people, and it would be remiss not to mention them in the context of this conversation. It's a tragic chapter in their story, one that continues to resonate today.
It is heartbreaking. And of course, it makes me think about all those descendants of the Tyari and Tkhuma who were scattered across the globe. Did that diaspora, that forced displacement, in a way mirror those earlier struggles against Bedr Khan and others who sought to erase them?
It's a poignant parallel, isn't it? Because even as they were driven from their ancestral homeland, the Assyrians carried their identity with them. Imagine that. New lands, new languages, new challenges at every turn, and yet they clung to who they were.
It speaks volumes about the strength of their cultural heritage, doesn't it? That even in the face of such immense loss and upheaval, they found ways to rebuild, to keep those traditions alive.
It's a testament to the human spirit's remarkable ability to find ways to hold on to hope, even in the darkest of times. They established new communities, found ways to preserve their language, kept those ancient stories alive, all while navigating the complexities of new cultures and societies. That takes an incredible amount of strength and determination.
And it speaks to the legacy of the Tyari and Tkhuma, doesn't it? That spirit of resilience, of protecting their identity against all odds. It seems like that became woven into the fabric of the Assyrian diaspora.
It's a legacy that continues to inspire today. To know that your ancestors faced down such adversity, that they clung to their identity even when it seemed like all was lost, that's a powerful inheritance.
It certainly makes you think. We started this deep dive with your interest in the Tyari and Tkhuma, these almost mythical-sounding names from the mountains of Hakkari. And what we've discovered is a story of resilience, of cultural survival against incredible odds, a story that echoes through generations. What do you hope our listener takes away from this journey we've been on together today?
I think the most important thing is that sense of hope, that spark of recognition that even in the face of unimaginable challenges, culture has the power to endure. The Tyari and Tkhuma, and indeed the entire Assyrian story, reminds us that heritage is a powerful force, one that can connect us to the past, provide strength in the present, and inspire us to build a better future.
Beautifully said. And for you listening, I hope this deep dive into the world of the Tyari and Tkhuma has not just satisfied your curiosity, but also sparked a desire to explore your own heritage, to uncover the stories that have shaped who you are. Because within those stories, you might just find those same echoes of resilience, the same strength of spirit that allowed those ancient tribes to thrive against all odds. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of the deep dive alive.